Buckle up, this is gonna be a crash course. Now, to start us off, ASL has a different grammar structure than English. A lot of people have no idea when they get started learning, so when you get to that point, it can feel really intimidating. So what I'm gonna do real quick is kind of break down the grammar structure for you, and then also provide some tips that really helped me when I was starting out. So, in English, sentence structure with statements is generally subject, verb, object. So, quick example, I hit him. With ASL, it's object, subject, verb. Him, I hit. Here's the thing about that though. Nobody has time to keep object, subject, temporal settings straight in their head. Them's some fancy words for fancy people. We're trying to make learning ASL accessible for your everyday person of any age with any amount of background. So forget the fancy vocabulary. The structure that we're gonna go with for general statements is when, where, what, who, do. When is it happening? Where is it happening? What is it happening with or to? Who is doing it? And what are they doing? When, where, what, who, do. ASL is a visual language, so you go about explaining things as if you're drawing a picture. You start big picture. This is your background information. When and where is the thing happening? You get a little closer to the foreground. What's it happening with or to? And then you get into the foreground, which is gonna be who's doing it, what are they doing, and little bonus, how do they feel about it? Now, that last part is not a required piece of the grammatical structure. However, it is very much a part of deaf culture. If you ever have the pleasure of sitting down and actually conversing with a deaf person, you are going to know how we feel about what we're saying. Anyways, back to the structure. While when, where, what, who, do is a great foundation, you don't always need all 5 pieces. For example, if something is in the present tense, you can exclude the when entirely. In ASL, what you're saying is always assumed to be present tense unless you state otherwise, which means no conjugation's necessary. So if you're saying, I am going to the store, you would say, store I go. That's where, who, do. Of course, in that situation, the where would also be the what because the store is the object of the sentence, but again, we're putting that aside. We're here to simplify, not go on linguistic tangents, Paris. Okay, let's go. So that's gonna be your general layout for statements. However, when we move on to questions, things get a little more interesting. Asking a yes or no question follows the same structure as a statement, but you end it with your eyebrows raised. So the only difference between you went to the store yesterday and did you go to the store yesterday is these babies right here. Now, I've already got, shall we say, a dynamic face. So because I already make so many facial expressions while I'm talking in the first place, I accentuate that eyebrow raise with a head tilt. So yesterday, store you go. So that's yes and no, but what about if you need to ask who, what, when, where, why, and how? Easiest way to think about it is that the signs for who, what, when, where, why, how come with a question mark, and therefore need to be the end of the sentence. I'll explain what that really means in just a second, but first let's lay out some examples. Dipping back into the example of going to the store, if I were to ask somebody, why did they go to the store yesterday? It's gonna follow the same sentence structure with that why tacked onto the end. So, yesterday, store you go, why? And that's where we talk about the question mark, because the question mark is your eyebrows again. So for yes and no questions, the only thing you need to add is an eyebrow raise and possibly a little head tilt. But for who, what, when, or why, you're gonna attach furrowed brows to the question word and tack it onto the end of the sentence as your question mark. So if you are asking who, what, when, where, why, all of those should be produced with a furrowed brow. And I say if you're genuinely asking, because if it's rhetorical, you do raised brows. You did what? You went where? You saw who? Grammar. So to recap, your sentence structure is when, where, what, who, do. Start with big background information and get more specific and closer to the foreground. If you want to ask a yes or no question, you follow the exact same sentence structure but end it with raised brows. If you want to make an information request, those who, what, when, where, why, how questions, you're going to do the same sentence structure, tack your question word onto the end and furrow your brow. But if you want to make that same question sarcastically or rhetorically, you do it with a raised brow. Now, this video was primarily just for sentence structure. If you want an in-depth explanation on like facial grammar and all that comes with that, please let me know. I would be thrilled. Y'all see my cat just run up there? If you've made it this far, please consider subscribing and maybe checking out some of my music. Deaf musicians don't get a ton of recognition because people don't really know how we exist, and I would like to change that, so thank you. Also, you know, like and subscribe and all the other things that actual YouTubers say. Thank you so much. When you're cold and you're cold and you're cold again, never